Imagine waking up tomorrow and your bank account shows $0. Would you panic or would you start over? Well, today, in this explainer, we're looking at a mind-bending psychological experiment that plays right into that fear. It was totally disguised as a massive viral 100-day stunt, but we're going to take a deep dive into the underlying behavioral science, the extreme isolation, and the wild economics that took place inside Mr. Beast's famous White Room Challenge. Because, honestly, one single moment or one challenge can completely change a life. And you are definitely going to want to see how the human mind reacts when you strip literally everything else away.
So, ask yourself this. Imagine being blindfolded, walking into a blindingly white cube, and when you take that blindfold off, boom, you're staring at a complete stranger. No phones, no entertainment, no windows. Your only mission is to stay inside that room for 100 days. Do that, and you split $500,000. What would you do? Would you thrive, or would you kind of slowly lose your grip on reality? The stakes here are absolutely massive, and as we're about to see, the mental toll, it's even bigger. Okay, let's dive right into this. To really grasp what happened in that room, we're going to break this down into 5 quick stages: the ultimate isolation experiment, the psychology of extreme boredom, the economics of temptation, the relational breaking point, and finally, the final prisoner's dilemma. Let's kick things off with part 1, the ultimate isolation experiment. So our subjects here are Susie and Bailey. And remember, before those blindfolds came off, they had absolutely no idea who the other person was. Just 2 total strangers thrown into this giant, featureless white cube. The rules were super rigid. Number 1, stay in the room for exactly 100 days. Number 2, never cross the exposed red line, or you forfeit everything. 3, finish the time and you win $500,000 to split evenly. But rule 4? Oh, that is the kicker. If one person taps out and leaves early, they both get absolutely nothing. Their success and their failure is 100% tied to a total stranger. Now, at first glance, you might be thinking, hey, that actually doesn't sound too bad, right? I mean, they had enough healthy food to last all 100 days. Sure, it was literally the exact same canned chicken and beef over and over again, but still, they had a private bathroom, a shower, 2 beds. But there were catches, severe ones. Blinding white lights that stayed on constantly, and absolutely 0 clocks or natural sunlight. So while their physical needs were perfectly met, their psychological needs, the need for variation, for tracking time, for just basic stimulation, completely starved from minute 1. Which brings us to section 2, the psychology of extreme boredom. Okay, let's look at the early days. Because once the initial awkwardness of meeting a stranger wore off, the real enemy showed up, and that was a profound, soul-crushing lack of stimulation. It is wild to see how fast human behavior regresses. We are talking day 7, just 1 week into a 14-week challenge, and they're already resorting to absurd stuff just to stay entertained. Bailey literally started whipping pieces of pork at a target across the room, proudly declaring that the veggies never stood a chance. Without any external input, they had to invent these wacky games out of their own food rations just to get a tiny hit of dopamine. But as those days dragged into weeks, that boredom morphed into some seriously desperate ingenuity. Around day 40, they were gifted a TV screen. The catch? Every movie cost $10,000, which, naturally, they refused to pay. So what does Bailey do? He literally rips a wire off the wall, uses a knife to fray the end of it, and jams it directly into the TV's antenna spot. And no way, it actually worked. They picked up a local digital broadcast of a random car race. Now, they didn't even care about racing, but suddenly, they were super fans. It wasn't about the cars at all. It was just this desperate lifeline to feel somewhat connected to the real world, moving outside their little white cube. Moving right along to section 3, the economics of temptation. You see, this challenge wasn't just about sensory deprivation. It was actually a brilliant hidden study in behavioral economics. By totally restricting the economy inside the room, this experiment wildly inflated the value of ordinary, everyday goods. Walk through this crazy inflation with me for a second. Out here in the real world, salt and pepper might set you back, $3? In the chamber economy, 10 grand. Want a coffee machine? 10 grand. How about just the ability to turn off those blinding white lights so you can actually get some decent sleep, plus comfortable beds? Yep, that'll be $50,000 out of your shared prize pool. It was constant temptation. It really shows the massive contrast between what we take for granted every day and the astronomical prices Susie and Bailey had to pay from their future wealth just to survive the present. And this brilliantly illustrates the devastating psychological blow of risk aversion. On day 60, they were offered this giant mystery box. The cost to keep whatever was inside was $50,000. They debated it endlessly, but ultimately decided to play it safe. They were terrified it was a trick. Well, when they declined, the box was opened anyway. Inside, their $50,000 back, plus the keys to 2 brand new, totally free Teslas. By choosing to play it safe and not spend the money, they missed out on the whole shebang. And the emotional toll of that specific economic decision was just brutal. Susie was literally haunted by the regret of missing out on those dream cars. She told Bailey she felt physically sick, and honestly, she obsessed over it for 9 days straight. It's a huge takeaway for us. In a deprived environment, the mental pain of missing out on a massive reward can be just as damaging to your psyche as the isolation itself. So all of this built up to a massive climax on day 70. They were suddenly presented with every single item they had previously rejected. The beds, the spices, movies, a chef, and yup, a new mystery box. But this time, it was a blind auction. They had to guess the minimum price to win it all. Terrified of missing out again, they boldly bid $100,101, and they won. They sacrificed a huge chunk of their remaining prize bowl, but they finally secured their sanity, some much-needed comfort, and, as it turns out, 2 smaller Teslas that were hidden in that new box. All right, on to Section 4, the relational breaking point. So they've finally spent the money. They got the comfortable beds, hot food, movies. You'd probably assume the final stretch of the 100 days would be an absolute breeze, right? Well, not exactly. Instead, we see what we can call the paradox of luxury. When they had absolutely nothing, they were a unified team surviving against the White Room. But ironically, once they bought all those luxury items, their friendship actually started to crack. More comfort didn't lead to happiness. It just created territory disputes, differing preferences, and deep, deep conflict. I mean, just look at how the isolation magnified the most petty grievances. They had a limited hot water tank, right? So Bailey showering first meant Susie was stuck taking freezing cold showers for months. Susie refused to finish a game of Monopoly that had been dragging on for 7 days, so Bailey retaliated by hiding the dice. They would spend 25 agonizing minutes just trying to agree on one single movie to watch, and their energy levels? Completely mismatched. Bailey would be aggressively throwing a solo rave at 3 in the morning, completely wired, while Susie practically retreated to the bathroom just to escape him. These minor annoyances turned into major relational stress tests as that clock ticked down. Which leads us to our final section, number 5, the final prisoner's dilemma. By day 99, they could barely stand each other. But hey, they had survived. Just 24 hours left. And that is exactly when the ultimate twist was dropped, turning this whole endurance test into a classic game theory experiment. On their final night, the remaining prize money hinged on a matrix: split or steal. They were separated, blindfolded, and given earplugs. Each had a digital screen with 2 buttons. Here's how it worked. If both choose split, they share the remaining prize money evenly. If one chooses split and the other chooses steal, the one who steals takes absolutely everything, leaving the other with 0. But if they both get greedy and press steal, they both walk away with $0 after 100 days of absolute torment. Just think about exactly what was at stake here. After all their purchases, there was roughly $360,000 left in the vault. If they split, they each walk away with a life-changing $180,000. But staring at that steal button, that means staring at the very real possibility of keeping all $360,000 for yourself. The temptation to betray a stranger that you've been bickering with for weeks is absolutely massive. And man, the game mechanics induce pure paranoia. Bailey hit the nail on the head when he said, "What do you say to somebody that steals 180? Maybe you get ahead of it and you steal it." Even if you genuinely want to split, the terrifying thought that your partner might betray you makes you seriously consider stealing, purely out of self-defense. You really don't want to be the fool who played nice and got left with nothing. The tension in those final 30 seconds was literally unbearable. But, spoiler alert, we reached a totally heartwarming climax. Despite the intense psychological pressure, the crazy paranoia, and months of extreme deprivation, they both pressed split. The room instantly turned green. After 100 days of having every limit of their minds tested, their trust in each other actually held firm. And that brings us to the end of this incredible journey of human endurance. We've seen how isolation completely starves the brain, how artificial economies can manipulate our desires, and how stress fractures even the simplest relationships. But ultimately, Susie and Bailey proved that human connection can survive all of that. So, I'm going to leave you with this final lingering thought. After 100 days of extreme isolation, deprivation, and ultimate temptation, what price would you put on trust? Could you have pressed that split button? Think about it. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the psychology around you.